to be between 6 months and a year, and I was about 7 months, so pretty average. But some people, it can be overnight. It just sort of depends on what editors are looking for and what their schedules are like, and whether they have time to read right at that particular moment that your manuscript lands on their desk. There's a lot of factors involved. But that's the mission. So then, say an editor really, really likes your manuscript. They can't just approve it on the spot. They have to take it to acquisitions meeting. And that means that they have to get the rest of the team, the rest of the editorial team on board with putting an offer on your manuscript. And oftentimes that includes going to the sales team and the marketing team and getting their buy-in. So it can go through a lot of rounds just within the submission process to even get an offer on the table. So let's say that you were given an offer and went through all the acquisitions process and all of that. Then you might get to pick of many offers. I'll talk more about that later. But you pick one and you go with one editor, and then you start the editing process, which is in itself lengthy. It usually takes from deal to book on shelf, it usually takes about 1.5 years. That's average. So you can see we're talking about multiple years here that it takes to get a book published, from having finished writing it. So it's a long con, as Julep would say. So the rounds of editing are, you go through a content edit first, and that's where your editor reads the whole thing and sends you an edit letter. It's usually 3 to 5 pages. I've heard of some that are longer, but it just sort of depends on your editor how long it's going to be. And they talk about big picture changes like plot lines and character arcs and that kind of stuff. Then after that edit is done, you go through you might go through several rounds of that. Usually it's just one round, but you could go through more than one round until you everybody is on the same page with how they like it. Then you'll go through a line edit, which is the editor going through line by line and tweaking wording, talking about better ways to say XYZ, or to portray this character's emotional turmoil around this issue. And then after line edits, you'll go to copy edits, which can be a bear. Copy editors, man, they are wonderful. They earn every penny of their pay for sure. But it can be hard going through it as an author because they are just relentless. So, and that's good. You want them to be relentless, but copy editing can be a tough stage. And then after copy editing, you get first pass pages, which is it laid out. Your book is actually laid out in the font and everything, and the interior, the way it's going to look. You get a PDF of that. You look through basically to make sure there aren't any errors, that nothing from copy editing was missed. You're not trying to make any changes at that point. It's more just like a check. And then it'll go through a proofreader, and then once it goes through the proofreader, you'll see it again to make sure that the proofreader didn't introduce any new errors and, in fact, caught everything and the changes that the proofreader makes you're okay with. And then after that, it will be done. So those are the stages of editing, generally speaking. Again, there's room for movement, but that's the idea. Then, kind of while that's happening, you're also promoting the book, and we'll talk more about that in detail later, because there's what the publishing house does for promotion, and there's what you do for promotion, and there are different things, but sometimes you help each other out, but I'll go into that. And then the most important thing is that you lather, rinse, repeat, which means you write this book and you edit the heck out of it, and then you get it on the shelf. But while you're doing that, you also need to be producing new content. Content is king in this. So you never want to leave your readers hanging for too long. You could be J.K. Rowling or George R.R. Martin, and you can leave your readers hanging for years, and they'll just produce content for you in the meantime with all this marvelous fan fiction or TV shows or what have you. But for the most part, if you're starting out especially, you want to produce as much content as rapidly as possible. For young adults, that tends to be about a book a year. For romance, it can be 3 to 4 books a year. It's content is everything. So Now let's move on to self-publishing process. The self-publishing process is remarkably similar, except that instead of somebody else doing all of the editing for you, you have to do it all yourself. So, um, self-publishing, I mean, there is a wide range of what people do. Some people write it and they throw it up there with CreateSpace or, some other uh, uh, ebook producer like that. And other people, they actually, really try to hone it and work with it and make sure that the content is good before they put it up. And that's kind of the person that you want to be. You want to be famous for good content because people know, they can figure out if you're for real or if you're just throwing stuff up. So, so the process for self-publishing, if you want to do it really well, is you write your story, front to back and back to front again. Critique partners are critical. Like, they were critical before, but they are really critical if you're self-publishing. You need really good critique partners that you trust. Then after that, you want to pay for professional editing. I highly recommend this. I think that too often we're a little, and I've put myself in this category, we're a little impatient and want the content to be out there, like, it's ready, it's ready. But you really need somebody else's eyes on it. And somebody who knows the market and is not just somebody else who is also writing, but you want an editor, which is a totally different skill set in a lot of ways. So you definitely want professional editing. But my super secret author trick for this is semi-professional editing. So the problem with self-publishing, obviously, is that you have to pay for everything yourself. Like, you don't have the deep pockets of a publishing house to pay for these things for you. You have to pay for them up front and hope that it comes out in the wash in the end. But with professional editing and design work as well, this is true, there are people out there who are professional level who are freelancers, and they are really good. They've been, they have a lot of experience, they have a lot of education around it, but for one reason or another, they're not working for, a bigger entity, or they're not, they don't have all of the name backing behind them. Like, maybe they're just starting out, for example, and they're just starting to build a clientele. And those people are excellent because they charge very little for really quality work, and they're also 9 times out of 10 very, very attentive to you as their clients because they're trying to get good testimonials out of it, and so they want to do a really, really good job for you. So I highly recommend freelancers that are out there. You can find them on Twitter a lot of the times, people kind of talking back and forth about different people that they've used for different things. This is where your network really comes in handy. So that's my super secret author trick. I have used it for design specifically. Like, I've had several designers that I've worked with on website and promotional materials and things like that, they were stay-at-home moms or something like that, but their work is amazing. It's really, really quality stuff, and they charge way under what you might have paid a design firm to do the same work. So that's my super secret author trick. So talking about that, kind of now moving into design. So there's the professional editing piece. You also need professional design work. You're going to need professional design for your cover because, as much as you have vision for what you want for your cover, you're not a designer unless you've been trained to be a designer. There's a whole way of thinking about images and colors and dimensions, spatial dimension, and how much to put where, and that, I know as an instructional designer, my day job, that I will never get. I don't have that skill set. And I certainly don't have the software that can make it look good because that costs thousands of dollars. So you will, at some point, if you're self-publishing, you will need to pay for, and even if you're not, even if you're traditional publishing, you will need to pay for professional design work. So, keep that in mind as you're self-publishing too. You need to set aside money for these. So another piece of the design work too is it's really helpful to have somebody design the book's interior so that it looks professional when somebody purchases the book. It's a very different if you just throw up, something from a PDF. It doesn't have that same design quality, and you can definitely feel it as a reader. So, are these things absolutely necessary if you're self-publishing? No. I mean, you can put a PDF up on your website if you want to, and, figure out a way to charge people for that. But, if you really want to emphasize quality in your work, and if people notice and they will pay more for quality, this is kind of how I've seen more successful self-published authors operate. So, I'll talk more about promotional items later too, but and design work, because that comes into play in promotional stuff. But beyond that, we're moving now to publishing of the self-publishing process. You will have to find a place like CreateSpace, that's an Amazon affiliated company, I believe, to actually publish and make that available for readers. So there's that piece of it. Then you'll also have to promote the heck out of it, and you really will have to, because you don't have anybody on the publishing side doing it for you. So you will need to learn how to wear all of these hats and do it well. And that's why self-publishing is kind of a daunting option, but it could be the right option. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So, and again, with this, lather, rinse, repeat. Content is king. You need to put out enough to get a name for yourself, to get a following, so people remember you. Amanda Hocking was like incredible, like shooting star of self-publishing, and the reason that she did so well is that she put out a lot of content, and people liked it, and then they kept coming back for more because they remembered her name, because it wasn't 3 years in between projects. So keep in mind that you really want to make sure that you are offering your readers something of value. Not just promoting, but like offering them something of value on a regular basis. Okay, so that's self-publishing. And again, I don't know a whole lot about self-publishing. So, if you've heard other things from more savvy people in the self-publishing world, believe them, not me. But that's just been my experience with self-publishing. Okay, so other publishing. So there's the traditional big route publishing, there's self-publishing, there's also small press publishing. Small press publishing is nice in some ways in that you get more individualized attention from the small press people. You can have easier flow of information sometimes. Sometimes at a bigger house it's hard to get a hold of people because they're really busy and they have to go to all these conferences and all of these things. So at a small press you have a little bit more attention. The disadvantages are that small press doesn't necessarily have as deep of pockets as a big five publisher, and so there's not as much money for marketing and things like that. Like maybe you'll only get one copy of an ARC rather than 10, and so you only have one copy that you have to figure out how you're going to use it to promote, as opposed to 10, which you'd have a lot more opportunities. So there's some advantages, disadvantages to small press. Hybrid publishing. This is a new thing, and it is very intriguing to me. This is what I was talking about earlier with self-publishing might be the right answer in some instances. So there are a lot of authors chattering now about doing traditional publishing for some books and then doing self-publishing for other books, and having the self-publishing books sort of support the long dry spells in between the big publishing books. So let me give you an example. So I belong to several young adult author groups because I love it. I love talking about writing, and so I belong to a lot of groups. And some people have been talking about how they might start crossing genre with self-publishing and maybe doing a self-published romance novel in between their two big, young adult novels that are coming out, spaced a year apart. So, I haven't talked to anybody who has done it yet. They're still kind of in the works of trying it out, thinking about it, talking to their agents about it. I know my agent is starting a sort of a self-publishing branch of the agency where they help their clients do a self-published, thing on the side. So it's kind of an interesting concept, and people are kind of playing around with it. So you can look for more information about that. And if you find out, let me know because I'm intrigued. Um, but the only thing that you need to be careful of with hybrid publishing, or really any cross publishing, is that when you sign a contract with a publisher, you often have two things: a non-compete clause and a contractual option. So the non-compete clause is that you say to the publisher that you will not, and the language can be different depending on the contract and what your agent works out, but like a standard would be like, you will not publish a young adult suspense novel within 6 months of the release of the novel you're publishing with that publisher. And the reason is you don't want to cannibalize your own readers. You don't want to push too much content on them from different places and confuse people. So there's good reasoning behind it. But if you have a non-compete clause, you have to be careful when you self-publish a book that you're not in violation of that non-compete clause. And really that's just a question of looking at the language and making sure that you're doing a new adult novel instead of a young adult novel, or something like that. And the contractual option is, for my books, I have a 2-book deal for Trust Me, I'm Lying, and the second follow-up book, Trust Me, I'm Trouble, is the sequel, and that's it. But I do have an option for a 3rd book in the series. That's what my option language specifically states, is a 3rd young adult novel in the same, Julep Dupree series. So I can't send a 3rd book to anybody else before my current publisher has a chance to look at it and decide whether or not they're going to buy it. So that's a contractual option. I need to make sure that, the language could be a lot looser. It could be any young adult novel. So then I wouldn't be able to sell any young adult novel, as self-published book or anywhere to any other publisher without first going to my initial publisher and having them decide whether to keep it or not. So just make sure you're not in violation of your contract if you decide to self-publish in addition to traditional publishing. But if you're not, there's nothing wrong with it. So, why not explore all your options? So there's that. Super secret author trick about publishing in general. I'm going to say this several times throughout this presentation. Professionalism is really important. And professionalism really is just 80% hard work, 10% humility and gratitude, and 10% confidence and enthusiasm. And if you have those things and you put them all together, and every time you interact with an industry person, whether it be another writer, an agent, an editor, anybody who you think can get you somewhere, and anybody who you can help get somewhere. If you have that hard work, that very humble and sort of enthusiastic presence the entire time, people will remember you, and they will really be able to depend on you and trust you that you are not going to fly off the handle. They're much more willing to work with you. And no matter what happens, you have to maintain that. And it can be hard. It can be really hard sometimes, especially when other people are acting non-professional. That's the worst. But you absolutely should maintain that at all times, and it will see you really far. Okay, let me speed up. Okay, so querying agents. First you have to find the agents. That's, like 50% of the work is finding the agents. I found agents on Twitter. Twitter to me is like Scrivener is. Like, I will talk about Twitter and Scrivener, and they will be like my shining writing things. If I have anything to say to you guys, it's Twitter and Scrivener. But anyway, so I found a lot of agents on Twitter just by searching literary agents, or a young adult literary agent, or a YA literary agent. And then I followed a bunch of them, and I actually listened to what they had to say, and it just improved my writing. It improved my ability to understand the industry by leaps and bounds, like almost overnight. I just can't say enough about how much, literary agents, they want you to succeed. They really want to love your work. They want to. They are rooting for you all the way, but you do have to meet them halfway by figuring out what it is they want and need and what you need to do. And a good way to do that is through Twitter. Another way to find them is, oh, and one more thing about that. I have a list of agents and publishers, a Twitter list of people that I follow, and I put that in the resources page of this presentation, and so you guys can just subscribe to that list, and you can see all the agents that I follow, and I periodically add agents to it, and they're all people that I feel like offer a lot to writers, especially young adult writers, but pretty much any writers. So I highly recommend following that list if you don't have a list of agents yourself. If you're ready, well, even if you're not ready quite yet for the querying process, you can learn a lot. Plus, you can connect, surprisingly, connect with agents on a personal level, not really talking to them necessarily because they don't have time to respond to everybody, but you can learn so much about their personalities. And then when you do that and they start offering you representation, you know so much more about them, and it's a lot easier to make the decision, do I really want to go with this person, or our working style's not going to mesh? So it's sort of has a side benefit of actually personally getting to know agents before you're even ready to query. So that's Twitter. The other place you can find them is the Association of Authors Representatives. They have a database, and there's a handy little tab on their website that says Find an Agent. And you just type in your search parameters, and voila, you have a whole list of agents complete with their submission guidelines right there in front of you. And that is just priceless. It saves you a ton of work. So I think that is a wonderful place to look, and I put it in the resources page as well. But if you do decide to just do it, sort of cherry picking through the internet and finding, because you can always Google young adult literary agent. If you do that, you have to make sure that you follow people's submission guidelines very specifically, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So, perfect query letter. There are little scads of information about the perfect query letter out there, and I'm not going to go too deep into it today, but the general idea is you want to have 3 paragraphs max. It's got to be 1 page. You want 2 paragraphs for sort of a back of book blurb, and there's a lot of science that goes into thinking about how you structure that. But again, people have explained it far better than I, and I'll point you to some resources later. And then the last paragraph, you want to make it about you and about why you are querying that agent, if you have a reason. And I follow you on Twitter, and I really, really love you. Might potentially be, I don't want to say it exactly like that, but something like that is what I put in several of my query letters. And you always, always, always want to follow submission guidelines. You can instantly get rejected for not following submission guidelines. I know a lot of literary agents are kind, and they won't just auto reject you based on that, but you don't want to risk it. If you really like an agent, follow their submission guidelines. I mean, it's not too much to ask. So, and generally they're pretty simple. They're just just submit it through email. Don't mail it to me, and don't call me on the phone. It can be as simple as that. A lot of people make that mistake. 75% of people make the mistake of not following submission guidelines. If you're part of the 25% that does follow submission guidelines, you're already way ahead. So that's a biggie. You can also find agents at conferences. You can pitch to them. Sometimes that costs money, but not a lot. That's conference money, not agent money. The agent doesn't get that money. That's for the conference to, help their costs. But it's not a lot. I think I paid $15 once to pitch to an agent at a conference. It can be successful, but don't pitch to any old agent. You definitely want an agent that will like your work. Query contests. Okay, this is another super secret author trick for me. I got my agent through a query contest, and I didn't even actually mean to, but it was sort of kind of a hilarious story. I had just written the book, and I thought it was ready for querying, but I wanted to edit it more. But I just wanted to see if the premise would work, so I submitted it to this query contest, and Um, lo and behold, I got, actual requests for it, and I panicked because I didn't feel like, it was quite edited enough. But I really quickly, edited as much as I could and sent it to the people who requested it. And I was very lucky that my dream agent was the first person. Well, she wasn't the first person to request it, but she was the first person to read it all the way through and email and call me and say, I want to offer representation. So what happens when that happens is you have to call or you have to email all the other agents who still have your manuscript and let them know, and then give them a week to come around and say if they want to throw their hat in the ring. And I happened to, and so then I had to decide. But because I had been following Laura on Twitter for like a year, I already kind of knew that like she was it for me. So even though the other agents that offered were wonderful, and it was just mind-blowingly awful having to choose between them. It really was in the end no contest. Laura was it. So query contests. They are usually hosted on blogs or maybe Twitter. Sometimes Twitter has like PitchMad contests where you use a hashtag and you submit like your elevator pitch and then the hashtag, and then agents might troll it and might make requests of you through Twitter. But those are organized events, so you'd want to follow the mods who organize those things. And if you're on Twitter and you're following writers, you can't escape it. It's everywhere. So it's really easy to find those opportunities on Twitter. Same with traditional blog style query contests. And I say traditional, but they really haven't been around that long, maybe a couple of years. But they're awesome. They like put people's work that's like pre-vetted almost in front of agents, and agents come and bid on just a select group. It's really, even more so than getting requests from agents, you meet other writers, and they become your critique partners because they're closer to your level than maybe some local writers that you happen to know, or maybe your friend who's sort of kind of into writing but not as much as you are. Like meeting people in query contests and things like that can really be beneficial to networking. But again, I'll talk about that more later. So editors. Editors. If you have an agent, then you don't have to worry too much about editors because your agent kind of works with them for you for the submission process part. You will need to work with them later, but it's well, let's just go in order. So there's small press editors and there's big five editors, and they're basically the same animal. They edit, but sometimes small press submission processes are slightly different than the big five submission processes, and they might have, say, like an open submission call, and you can just submit, your manuscript without going through an agent, and that can be great opportunity, but it can also be kind of a double-edged sword. So just make sure that you are careful about that, but I'll talk about that more later. Submission process. Just in general, learn to let go. Really, don't press refresh on your email like a jillion times like you want to. It's just stay away from the email. The best thing to do during the submission process is to keep writing. I've said this many times. Just keep writing. It will save your sanity. So keep writing, and then say you get to a place where you get lots of offers. All of a sudden, people are crawling out of the woodwork to publish your novel. Then you have what's called an auction. Sometimes you can have multiple offers and not have an auction, which is what happened to me, because sometimes an auction is not in your best interest. But let's say that you have a lot of people, a lot of big publishers who want to publish your book, then it might go to auction. Your agent might decide it's the best idea. And what that means is that every publisher puts their best offer on the table, and you get to choose between the offers. The problem with an auction is that you don't get to really negotiate very much. You just have to accept whatever is the best offer. So it might be that one offers a lot of money, but the option sucks, or the royalty rate is horrible, or something, and you can't you can't make tweaks on it. You have to just pick it if you want the most money at the moment, for the advance. So, that's kind of why auction might be not right. But when it is, an auction, it's looked on in the industry as like a really big deal, and it means that you're going places, you're pretty hot stuff. So, so an auction can be a really good thing too. It's definitely a good feeling, to have multiple people interested in your book. So working with an editor, again, I'm going to say learn to let go and to keep writing, because an editor is a very busy person, and they might take months and months and months to get you your edit letter. And during that time, while you're twiddling your thumbs, you should keep writing, because, like I said before, it will keep you sane. So, sales, marketing, and publicity. So these are people who help your book, and you may not even meet them, ever. Like, you may not even ever talk to them. They're sales reps, and those are the people who work for your publisher, but they go out, they have regions that they go out to the bookstores, and they pitch your book to those bookstores. But not just your book, every book that the publisher is publishing. So their sales reps are very important, because if they like you, then they will pitch, your book a little harder than maybe others. And it's because they just can't pitch everything. They just can't. So if you're a debut author and nobody knows who you are, then you're really hoping those sales reps, are on your side. Marketing folks, they have a lot of say in whether your book even gets picked up. They have a lot of say in your cover. They have a lot of say in your title. They have a lot of say in everything, pretty much, about your book, except the actual words. Sorry. Anyway, so they're very important, but you probably won't ever talk to them. I've never talked to the marketing people, but I know they're working really hard in the background to make sure that, my book is getting out to magazines and other things like that. Same with publicity folks. They're making sure that my arcs get to bloggers and to librarians and conferences and things, to make sure that I'm getting as much exposure as possible. So they're really all about discovery of your book and less about promotion. Discovery and promotion are very different. Discovery is like where people can come in and discover your book on a shelf, or where a librarian can come and discover your book at a conference. And promotion is much more active. It's where you are telling people about your book. So you're more in charge of the promotion. They're more in charge of discovery. So should have brought in some water. Sorry. Super secret author trick, they will do their jobs, you do yours, but don't be afraid to ask questions. If you need to know something like, what does launch day look like? Like, I just recently emailed my publicist and was like, okay, I need to know, are you guys going to do a Facebook event for me, or do I need to do my own? Because I don't want to set up my own only to have, be, when I should be funneling people to you, is it okay if I do my own? And she said, yeah, we don't really do anything for Facebook, so go ahead. So, don't be afraid to ask those kinds of questions, but don't pester them either, because, you're just taking time away from them doing things for you. So that is something I learned the hard way. Booksellers, librarians, and teachers are a huge part of the equation. That's how, especially teens, will find your book. Indies are your best friend, independent bookstores. They love authors, and they really want you to succeed, and they love books. They actually do love books. They're not there doing what they do if they don't. So you want to show them some love. Make sure that they are, that you're not ticking them off by, like, always, at the detriment of them promoting Amazon links and things like that. Just don't have to worry about them too much, but keep them in the back of your mind. Like, they could use some help from authors, and it's a symbiotic relationship. So there's that. So librarians and teachers, they're your other best friends. Make their lives as easy as possible. You can make teachers' guides for the teachers so that they don't have to come up with a complete lesson plan themselves. For librarians, you could come up with programming for them so they don't have to go look for programming. Like, for example, a couple of my debut author friends and I, and I'll talk about debut authors in a minute, debut author friends and I, we do a young adult trivia game. And, we set up the presentation, we provide the prizes, and we just pitched it to, all the librarians in the Multnomah County District and all the librarians in the Beaverton, Washington County District. And we've gotten, quite a few gigs out of that. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to actually get to meet real teenagers. And it's wonderful for the librarians because they're always looking for quality programming. And this is a really easy, low promotional way to do it. So we are promoting our books, but not heavily promoting them. We are offering something. So there's that. School visits is a whole other, it's a whole other thing. And it can be like a presentation in and of itself. But there is, such a thing as school visits, and authors do sometimes make a living doing that. But again, that's for another talk for another time. I'm going to back up really quick and talk about Amazon with booksellers. Amazon is there's a lot of stuff going on with Amazon right now. It is hard to tell whether they are the devil or just the new way of doing things. I know Hachette is not super happy with them right now. Stephen Colbert is probably ready to, dive bomb them, but at the same time, people are reading like never before, and I think Amazon is at least a part of that because it makes books so easy to access. For the first time ever, you can access them from your home, any book that you want. So it's, I don't know. I don't know about Amazon, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely something you'll become aware of as an author, though. So super secret author trick for this: professionalism plus connection equals gets you noticed. I always try my best to be as professional as possible, and I connect with people like crazy. Especially on Twitter and the debut author group I'll talk about later, and all of these things have gotten me so many opportunities and so much exposure that I never could have gotten on my own. Like, you definitely want to be somebody that people are happy to know and happy to do things for, and then, do things for them too. Definitely return the favor, and that's what builds up a lot of goodwill and exposure. So the flip side of industry pitfalls. Let's talk about that. Writers behaving badly. This happens a lot, and you should probably be aware of it. So a good example of writers behaving badly is bad queries. You do not want to impersonalize your query to an agent. You don't want to say, "Dear agent," and then send the same exact query to 100 agents. They get it. They know. If they see all those agents in the CC line, they're probably going to trash your query unless it's like amazing, but it's just not the done thing. Usually you want to query agents that you know a little bit about them and you think you'll be a good fit. So personalize your queries. Also, bad queries are incorrect queries. If they're not following the submission guidelines, then you've missed kind of a big opportunity there. Also, it's amazing to even believe this, but agents often get very rude queries. They, just completely, if you don't want this book, then you are a crazy person. Just like really off-putting rude queries. So, don't do that. Writers do. And again, if you're one of the 25% that does it right, then you're ahead of the game. Bad reaction to rejection is another thing that authors do badly. Don't respond to an agent or editor rejection in a negative way or at all. That's not what they're there for. If they've rejected it, maybe it's just not for them, and you just move on to the next agent. Also, do not react to bad reviews of anybody's, and this is hard for me because I hate it when people badly review a book that I loved or a book that was a friend of mine's, and it was like one of those awful, really rude reviews, not even a negative review, but a horrible, like, tear the author down kind of review. I hate those. But anyway, don't have unrealistic expectations of money, time, and attention. As a debut author, especially, there's not a lot of money in writing. You can't really make a living doing it. I have a day job. Um, it it takes a lot of your time, and it takes a lot of everybody's time who's involved, and so they don't have a lot of time for you necessarily. So if you email somebody, don't expect a response back right away. It might take them a while. They have a lot of authors that they're trying to work with, and the same goes for attention. You may not get as much attention as you think that you will, because you think, oh, my editor just has a few authors. That's not the case. They have tons of authors, and they're trying to give everybody equal amount of attention. So keep all that in mind. Don't go into this with unrealistic expectations. And if you're going into this thinking you're going to be famous and you're going to be rich, and you don't really like writing that much, get out while you still can. Because you really have to love writing in order to put up with all of the stuff that you have to put up with to become an author. So really make sure that you love writing, because you're not going to be, huge amounts of wealthy coming out of this. Maybe 1% of authors come out of this wealthy. You could make a living at it, but it will take a lot longer than you think it will. So keep that in mind. Super secret author trick. If you're really angry, write that angry, ranty post or email and then delete it. Don't post it. Keep writing your books, because that is the best distraction ever. And if it is actually a problem, stick your agent on it. That's what they're there for. Sorry. Oh my gosh, this is an extra long one. Sorry. So I might be rushing through these last few slides, but you are going to get the presentation, so hopefully that will explain everything. Also, industry pitfalls are tricksters. Don't fall for faux agents. An agent will never, ever, ever charge reading fees, ever, ever, ever. If they're charging you a reading fee, then run. They should not be doing that. So a real agent would never charge you a reading fee. New presses and imprints. Beware. They can be legit, but they might not be legit. They might just be trying to take your money. Even if the publisher that you're going with, it's like a new small press or imprint, even if they are legit, it might still be a bad experience. I have a friend who that recently happened to, where it was a newer-ish imprint, and they didn't really quite have their act together yet, and so she had kind of wished that she had waited. So just so you're aware of those possible pitfalls. Super secret author trick. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And you can always rely on your author friends for a reality check. Like, does this sound legitimate to you? And they may actually have heard something about how it's not legitimate. So always check with people about that. And also your agent will know. Now, platform. My gosh, I still have so much to tell you guys. Okay, platform, really quick. Your platform that people keep talking about, it's the people you can count on to buy your book. It's as simple as that. It's your personal network, your friends and family. It's your blog followers, if you have a blog. It's your social media followers, if you're on Twitter or Pinterest. Those are people that you can generally count on to buy your book. That's your platform. And people always talk about growing their platform. And, it's not super important for a fiction author. It is very important for a nonfiction author. But for a fiction author, it's less important, especially a debut author. But it is nice to have, and it's nice to connect with people. So that's something to think about. It's not about constantly promoting to those people, by the way. It's, again, about connecting with them and engaging with them. And you benefit as much from your platform as your career does. So, remember that. So the first thing you're going to want is a website. Buy your domain name early so it doesn't get taken. You can just throw something up pretty quickly for cheap with WordPress or Weebly. And those are both very easy, very user-friendly content development sites that you just plug into your domain name, or vice versa. You plug your domain name into that, whatever. Just, again, throw up a homepage and a blog at first and add stuff as you need it. Don't overthink the website right up front. Your job is to write. When your book is getting published, you will need a professional site. At that point, you can hire somebody like a designer and try to pick somebody who specializes in author sites because that will help. And it doesn't have to be expensive, as I mentioned earlier. So platform and marketing, Twitter is Twitter. I mean, I've been on and on about Twitter, but that's your writing colleagues. Those are the people that they will read your book because writers are readers too, but they're industry professionals. They will help you and connect with you and share woes and rejoice with you. So Twitter is an amazing thing. And I have a resource in there about Twitter for writers if you're not quite there with Twitter yet. It's a great resource. I started with that resource, and it helped me a million times. So again, you can also subscribe to my Agents and Pubs list, and that will hook you up with a bunch of industry professionals, which will hook you up with other industry professionals, which will hook you up with other writers. It's just a big web. Twitter is just wonderful. Let's see. Being engaging and thoughtful on Twitter, and use lists and follow industry hashtags like AmWriting and Pub Tips. Those are huge. But you can find all that out when you read about Twitter in that Twitter guide. So Facebook is your fans. They're friends and family mostly when you first start out. But they're readers too. And plus they love you. So of course they're going to buy your book. So you definitely want to treat your Facebook fans really well. You don't want to spam them. But you do want to offer like some behind the scenes goodies, like interesting info, maybe some prizes here and there, and some observations about writing because they like to see behind the scenes a little bit, and book writing news. And use pictures because pictures often get reposted. Other social media, personal blog, Pinterest, Instagram, Reddit, you name it. Any social media is pretty much good social media, but don't get bogged down. Your first job is writing. It's not, building your platform. Building your platform is helpful, but keep it in perspective. Okay, networking with others really quickly. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. It will save your sanity in a lot of ways. Start with Twitter. You can do local meetup groups, debut author groups. I promised I'd talk about this, but now I don't have time. But when you do, decide to publish your first book, and especially if you're not self-publishing but going the traditional route, a debut author group is just wonderful. Find one that's publishing in your year. So I'm in 1-4 Kidlit, which is the 2014 debut author group, and we help promote each other. We help comfort each other when things go poorly, when we get bad review or something. And it's amazing. I have gotten so much out of that group. I just can't even tell you. Pay it forward as much as you can, and don't waste time with people you don't like because you don't have time. As a debut author especially, that is the time you have the least amount of time. So, make sure that you're using it wisely. Okay, so I'm done. You can ask me anything, and there's a whole thing of resources, including a link to my resources page, which will give you even more resources. So hopefully all of this has been helpful, and find me on Twitter and ask me questions. I promise, I am not scary. So that's all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Summer. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. We wish you the best with your book in October, and we thank all of you who watched tonight. We hope that you all have a safe and amazing end to summer. Bye.
Bye.